My name is Gabrielle. I'm originally from the Phoenix area of Arizona. I moved to Mexico to live permanently in January of 2020. I'd studied here as a college student and just fell in love with the culture, the country. Would return to visit multiple times a year for the last 23 years. And I got an opportunity to move here for a job in January of 2020. And I took it and I've been here ever since, and I have no intentions of leaving. I choose Mexico City because it's the capital. I'm a big city girl. I've lived in Boston, I've lived in DC, I've lived in LA, and I just love everything that it has to offer. I also love the fact that, the airport is very accessible. It's close to Cuernavaca, the city that I studied abroad in. So I actually have what I call my Mexican family there, and I can spend time with them on the weekends if I need to or want to. I really wanted to be able to walk, to have mass transportation, to have cultural activities, to have pretty much everything at my fingertips. And Mexico City, being one of the largest cities in the world, definitely gives me that opportunity. So I rent an apartment in a neighborhood called San Miguel Chapultepec. Originally, when I moved into this apartment, the job that I had subsidized part of my rent. So it was a little bit easier to get the apartment than had I gone out on my own. But I did use a couple different websites, and I just walked around the neighborhoods that I was interested in living in and looked for rent signs. After I left that job, I renewed my lease with the landlords, and I had to provide 2 months rent up front and pay what is called a póliza, like an insurance policy, that in case I were to back out of the contract, the landlords would have the rent paid through the end of the contract. I chose this neighborhood initially because of its location to my work. It's kind of, some people like to call it the most centrally located neighborhood in Mexico City. I don't agree with that, but it does allow you to get to the outskirts of Mexico City, where a lot of the private schools and things are, which is where I was working, and also be very centralized. But one of my main things about this neighborhood that I loved was its vicinity to parks. I have 3 dogs. moved to the apartment with 1. I have collected 2 more since. And just the fact that there's mass transit. I have a metro stop 2 blocks away. I'm very close to some of the more popular expat neighborhoods, so I can walk over there, but then come back to my little oasis. I like to call my apartment the tree house, with all the trees surrounding it. And what I really love about my neighborhood specifically, it's very, very neighborly. The downstairs neighbors are actually the owners of the building. Across the street, I have a coffee shop that, they accept neighbors' packages from Amazon. They have keys to our apartments. It's not overwhelming, and it's really quiet, especially for a city that is smack in the middle of, especially for a neighborhood that's smack in the middle of a city. And the greenery is fabulous. So those are some of the things that I really, really like about this neighborhood. If you're looking for a long-term rental, which long-term here is 1 year or more, you oftentimes are required to have a residency. Sometimes landlords, you don't require it. It just really kind of depends. One of the things that really shocks people when they move to Mexico City about renting is that you need to have what is called an aval, which is basically a cosigner that owns property in Mexico City, which is even challenging sometimes for locals, so even more challenging for foreigners. Sometimes what you can do is you can negotiate with the landlord to say, pay 3-month deposit. For example, that's what I did when I was laid off from my job. I wanted to renew, so I gave them 3 months up front, and they allowed me to renew without the school as my co-signer. But there are a couple companies that have started popping up that specifically work with apartment owners that don't require the aval, or the company serves as the co-signer, and that can cost between 150 to up to 450, 500 US dollars or equivalent in pesos. So those are some things to keep in mind. Some expenses that you wouldn't necessarily find in other, well, in the US. I'm not really familiar with renting in other countries, but things that you wouldn't necessarily find in the US. You'll also find that there's a lot of pet-friendly places. Mexico City is a very pet-friendly place. So if you have an animal, it's easier to find a pet-friendly apartment than in some other places that I've lived in my life, for sure. Have a beautiful little fruit vegetable shop. There's a big market called El Chorrito, which is actually pretty known in the city, that you can get basically anything that you need. We also have a Soriana, which is a main grocery store. Electricity here is great. The fact that it's so green, there's parks surrounding. It's surrounded by Chapultepec Park. I have 2 churches that I can choose from on Sundays that are walking distance. Everything here is owned local. I buy my furniture from the guys down the street that make the furniture. I bought this shirt at a little, local tienda. And it is definitely growing. We have more little coffee shops and more places popping up as we get further away from the pandemic. When I first moved here, it was smack in the middle of lockdown. Not a lot was open, but having the green spaces was kind of a lifesaver. So that was really nice. Mexico City transportation. Well, there's no shortage of that here, for sure. We have the Metro. We've got Uber. We've got Didi, which is another rideshare app. Your standard cabs, your feet, your own legs. We have Eco BCs. We have Metro buses. We have Colectivo buses. Everything you can imagine. And then some people have their own vehicles. I primarily get around. It depends on where I'm going. If I'm, in my neighborhood, I just walk everywhere, or I'll walk over to, neighboring neighborhoods if I'm going to the dog park or something like that. I like to use the Metro as much as possible because it's just insanely inexpensive. Uber comparatively is also cheap, but, a $5 Uber ride or 100 peso Uber ride compared to a 5 peso Metro ride, which is 25 cents. Is a big difference. I have tried to use one of the buses multiple times, but it never comes when I need it to. So then I just gave up trying to use it. The Eco BC system also is fabulous if you want to go somewhere that's close by, a little too far to walk, or you don't have the time to get there. That's another system, another mode of transportation that I like to use. One of the things in Mexico City, when you think about a major city, you think concrete jungle, right? Tall buildings, you think Manhattan, you think Singapore, I don't know, other big, massive cities. One thing that's really unique about Mexico City is that even though it's one of the biggest cities in the world, there's still a ton of nature. We have it within the city. There's a lot of greenery, as you can see surrounding me. There's trees everywhere, tons of tree-lined streets, just gorgeous flowers. We've got the jacarandas that bloom in the spring. It's just gorgeous. But then we also have loads of parks. Bosque de Chapultepec, which a lot of people have maybe heard of in passing, but they don't realize the massive expanse of land that it actually is. It's, I believe, 4 times bigger than Central Park. It's the largest park in all of Latin America. It's got 6 sections. It has lakes. It has a castle. And you can spend, days just exploring the sections of Chapultepec. It's also got museums within the park, surrounding the park. And then outside of Mexico City, just on the outskirts, there's a lot of hiking, there's a lot of nature. So for nature lovers, you can, hire an Uber or get a driver, and within 30, 45 minutes, you can go hiking at Desierto de los Leones, El Ajusco, Toluca. You can go and see snow. Then we have a little bit south of the city, still in Mexico City, Xochimilco with the trajineras, where you get on boats and you go with friends and you have a party in the canals that used to be part of the city. Do I feel safe living in Mexico City? The short answer is yes. Very safe. Being a single female, I always am cautious of how I get around, what time of day or night, how I carry my belongings. I just try to be aware of my surroundings. Coming from the US and being a former teacher, kind of interpret that as you wish. I do honestly on the day-to-day feel safer here than I did there. But I also, I'm smart about things. I'm a well-traveled person, so I'm smart about things. I carry my belongings where, they're not visible. Most of the time, if I'm just walking down the street, I do have the luxury of speaking the language too. So, I can kind of gather if something might not feel right, or if, there's a conversation happening that might make my, my little unsafe radar pop up. But for the most part, yes, I don't walk late at night. I know other people that do, and they have no qualms about it, but I wouldn't do that anywhere in the world. I take the metro by myself with my computer to work. I mean, in a bag. I've never had a moment, knock on wood, where I've been in a situation where I'm I'm really uncomfortable. I feel really unsafe right now. I want to get out of this situation. Dealing with the Mexican healthcare system, I don't carry any type of extra health insurance. I qualify for the basic state insurance, which is very, very affordable for residents, but I've never actually used it. If I need to go to a doctor or a specialist or to get blood drawn, you can do these things at the pharmacy. You can get a full blood panel at the pharmacy, very inexpensive. Specialist, very inexpensive, about the price of what I would pay for a copay in the United States. It's just very, very direct. I haven't needed to deal, on a higher level with, say, a hospital or any major medical procedures. There's a fabulous website that I believe also has an app. It's called Doctoralia. And you can look on there for specialists. You can see where they went to school. You can see if they speak English or not. A lot of doctors here did train in the US, or in Canada or other countries. And so they do have a solid command of English. Again, I have the luxury of speaking the language, so that isn't necessarily a deal breaker for me. But I know that a lot of people have had the opportunity to find very high quality medical providers that speak English and they can communicate with them no problem. I have a fabulous acupuncturist here who is from the States. I personally prefer to use local providers, but in this case, we just really clicked, and so she's been my provider ever since I moved here. It's really nice here to be able to make your own medical decisions and to be able to access healthcare much quicker than where I come from, without having to jump through a bunch of hoops. There's just so much convenience here. A typical day in Mexico for me, there isn't really a typical day because my schedule varies on when I'm meeting clients. But on average, I would say if I'm going to the immigration office to work with clients, I get up really early at the immigration office around 5:36 a.m., in which I take an Uber, spend the day there, and then I'll come home and take my dogs out for a walk, probably go hang out at the coffee shop across the street. I get a lot of my socialization at the coffee shop across the street. It's a really cool place. They do events. It's a fabulous spot. There's just so much to do here. So it kind of depends on the week, kind of depends on, on any given day. I could have 15 different events to choose from, or I could sit at home after taking my dogs to the park for a couple of hours and just chill on the couch. Struggles. I'd say one of the struggles, probably the biggest struggle I have, is just communication. Just things here. Communication here is a different thing. For example, I can have a provider of some sort. My dog walker, for example. I'll tell him, hey, please make sure to message me before you guys are coming back because I don't know if I'll be home, and I'll let you know where to drop off the dog. And then I'll get a message that says, hey, we're at your house, and I'm nowhere near my house, and I have to scramble to find someone to let my dog in or something of the sort. And that happens a lot with just kind of service providers. How has my life changed since moving to Mexico? I'd say it's definitely slowed down quite a bit, or just become a lot less stressful. In the US, I was a teacher, which is just an insanely stressful job in general, but I also don't have the same concerns that I did there. Like, I don't really care where I shop. I just kind of live a more authentic life, I guess I could say. I feel like I have more genuine interactions with people, and I put myself out there a little bit more to meet new people. And I've learned a lot too. I mean, I've lived here off and on, over the years, but you just get to, especially here, I mean, it's such a metropolitan international city. It's fabulous to be able to interact with people from not just different cultures within Mexico, because each state and each part of Mexico has its own, special culture, but people from all over the world. So yeah, I feel like I have the opportunity to give back a little bit, and I feel like I am also taking care of myself a little bit better. So if a person is interested in moving to Mexico, they know they want to move to Mexico, one of the things that you have to do is apply for residency, and that process starts outside of Mexico, but then it needs to be finished at an immigration office in Mexico. And a lot of people choose to use facilitators. I myself am a facilitator here in Mexico City. I offer 2 sets of services. I offer a pre-consultation for people that haven't started the process at all. They're starting at 0, but they know they want to come. And then I offer the Mexican side services, where I guide you through everything in regards to finishing your visa process at the immigration office, completing your documents, going with you as moral support. Here in Mexico City, we're not allowed to actually go into the office, and helping you just through that entire process, streamlining it for you, making sure that everything is done correctly the first time, so that one of the biggest decisions that you're making in your life, and one of the most bureaucratic procedures that you might have to experience, goes smoothly for you. I also offer services helping people that maybe want to move to Mexico City but aren't sure, providing them with relocation tours within the city, taking you around to the different neighborhoods, showing you which each neighborhood has to offer, kind of the price point for those neighborhoods, and just giving you kind of a general what life is like in Mexico, Mexico City specifically. And if you're interested in learning more about either of my services, getting my info, you would be able to get that from the Mexico Relocation Guide. I am listed as one of the chosen facilitators and tour guides in the Mexico Relocation Guide. And I hope that if you do choose to come to Mexico and want to check out Mexico City, go ahead and contact me and choose to utilize my services. And if not, at least make contact. Let me know how it's going and let me know what you think of Mexico City.